כבוד הרב אייברס, כבוד הרב יוסט, כבוד הרבנים, leaders of the community, ladies, gentlemen, friends, Morai v'Rabotai. 60 years, the anniversary of the very existence of the State of Israel. One night before Tu B'Shvat tomorrow, a day which is relevant to Eretz Israel only, because of the mitzvot, all the commandments, who depend and who are linked to the earth, to the land, to the ground of the land of Israel. And I want to tell you a story from 1972. April 72, I was a young rabbi in a district in Tel Aviv. A phone call in my home. David Ben-Gurion is on the line. I was sure that someone is teasing me. I never spoke to David Ben-Gurion. He was a legend, the architect of the State of Israel, the first Prime Minister and Defense Minister, the builder of IDF, Tzva Hagana Israel, a legend. I asked him, Bameh Zachiti, what's my privilege that you phoned to me? He said, as you know, I like very much learning Bible. There are two sentences that I don't understand, and I ask you to make my eyes clear in understanding these two sentences. Usually he says, regularly, if you need a rabbi, you have to go to the rabbi. But I suffer of my ischias. My wife Paula passed away. I wouldn't bother you to come to the Negev where I live, usually in Sde Boker. But now I am for a few days in Tel Aviv, in my private home, Shderot Keren Kayemet 17. If you can do the effort, do me a favor and come to teach me these two psukim. One of the two I don't know, because we started with one of them and we talked 3.5 hours, and the people around him, bodyguard and the nurse there, they said he must have a rest. It was noontime. We started 10 o'clock. The posuk was something in the book of Genesis, Bereshit, chapter 6, sentence 2, ויראו בני האלוהים את בנות האדם כי טובות הנה, ויקחו להם נשים מכל אשר בחרו. He didn't understand when was it, where was it, who was it. It's a very complicated sentence. But this is not the point. While speaking, I said to him, it came to a point that I could ask him a question. Mr. Ben-Gurion, it's for me a great excitement to sit with you. As a child, I was brought up on the legend of Ben-Gurion. I came an orphanage from Holocaust. The leader number one of the not yet state, but the people of Israel was Ben-Gurion. I remember some of them even by heart, your speeches on the radio. We never met personally. I know one story telling about you. I sold this story in many speeches already. I must be sure that the story is true. I will tell you what I was told many years ago about yourself, and please correct me. If there is something exaggerating, something is wrong, something is a lie, tell me exactly if this is true. For me, this story is very important. I use it. Even now, here in Amsterdam, I use the story. He said, what's the story? 1936, in so-called Palestine, under the British mandate, there were riots. Arabs, Jews, riots. After the slaughter of Hebron 1929, after the Balfour Declaration of 1917 about a national home for the Jewish people in the land, historic land of Israel, 1917, 1929, 1936, here in Europe, I don't have to tell you, Nuremberg laws, Eretz Israel, riots, slaughtering Jews. The British government understood that it cannot go on like this with no comment. So they have sent a committee, investigation committee, headed by Lord Peel. The name of the committee was Va'adat, the Committee of Peel, to investigate what's going on here there in Palestine. How to solve the problem. This bloodshed to be stopped. We must do something. By the way, many committees came to Israel, but this was the first one at the end of it who recommended cancel the British mandate and founding a Jewish state of a part of Eretz Israel. What the UN Assembly have decided on November 29, 1947, means 10 years later, Jewish state to be born. 10 years earlier, the Peel Committee, even they were only British, they were the first to recommend the same, founding a Jewish state. They were sitting in the building of the court in Yerushalayim, in Migrash HaRosim, the Russian spot, as a court, Supreme Court. And there was a podium like this for the witnesses. The witnesses were Jews, Arabs, and British officers. On the podium, there were 3 books. The Quran for the Islamic, the New Testament for the Christians, and lahavdil, the Tanakh, the Bible, for the Jewish witnesses. They put their hand, or they swore, or they gave a declaration that they will true only true, nothing but the true, as a witness in a court. Ben Gurion was one of the last witnesses, because when they came, Peel, to Yerushalayim, Ben Gurion was in Paris, building the power of Haganah at that time, mobilizing weapon, financial means. The head of the Jewish Agency, this was his official title at that time, head of the Jewish Agency. He came to the Peel committee at the end of 1937, and he gave a lecture of 3 hours about the linkage between the Jewish people and the land of Israel. So this is our home. So this is our homeland. And this belongs only to us. 3 hours. A beautiful speech. I was told this story around 51, 52. Means 14, 15 years later. 15 years later. By one of the greatest scholars, Talmidei Chachamim in Yerushalayim, Reb Refoel Katzenelbogen, Zechet Tzadik Levracha. He was in the court. He have heard and have seen Ben Gurion standing and giving his speech. He told me that Ben Gurion finished his speech. There were only 3 cabins for telephones, public telephones, at the yard. All the journalists, correspondents from all the world, run to catch one of the cabins and to deliver the main points of Ben Gurion's speech about belonging of Eretz Israel to Am Israel. There was an intermission, and then starts the investigation. First was Lord Peel. Very calm, very quiet, with a great authority, he applied to Ben-Gurion, said, "We want to thank you for your witness. It was a great lesson in history. But may I ask you, Mr. Ben-Gurion, a personal question?" Ben-Gurion said, "Of course." "Where were you born, Mr. Ben-Gurion?" "Where I was born?" "Plonsk." He said, "Plonsk." "Where is Plonsk?" asked Bill. He said, "Somewhere in Poland." Quiet. Then Peel, murmuring to himself, but on the microphone so everyone could listen, "Very strange phenomena. All the Arab witnesses, the leaders of the Palestinian, like Nusayba and Nashashibi, El Tal and Husseini, were born here. Most of the Jewish witnesses, and you are one of the last, if not the last one, were not born here. They come mainly from Europe. Some of them, Asia, Iraq, Iran, Syria, Egypt one. If someone is sitting in a home and another one comes to him saying, "Leave it, it's my home, go away," he said, "But I was born here." "Yes, that's right, you were born here, but this is my home, it's my property. From many, many years ago, I was expelled from here and forced by foreign powers to leave my home. You have invaded in, it's my home, go away." International law, says Peel, tells us that the one who comes with this application, "Go away," has to bring a document. In the Turkish law, it calls kushan. A document, a piece of paper made by a clerk somewhere, that this property, this house, this field, this garden, belongs to this and that. Mr. Ben-Gurion, you come from Plonsk, and you say it's yours. Historically, we have heard the speech. But I ask you a very simple question. Do you have a kushan, a document, to show us, to prove that this property, land of Israel, belongs to you? Spontaneously, Ben-Gurion lifted up the Bible from the podium, that's what Rav Katzenelbogen told me, and said very, very excitedly, "Lord Peel, this is our document. This is our kushan. The Bible is not as holy, as worthy, as appreciated as a document made by a clerk in Kushta, Istanbul. A kushan from there is acceptable. The Bible, the book of the books, the greatest of all the books in mankind's history. The Bible says that the Almighty said to Abraham, I give you this land. And again repeated it to Isaac and then to Jacob and then to Moses. And we came in with Joshua ben Nun 3,300 years ago. We were expelled by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, by Titus, general of Rome. But this is our home, and this is the document. The journalist went to the 3 cabins to tell the story with the Bible to the newspapers and the radio stations. I sit now with Ben-Gurion, who told me, according to that story, who tells us, who tells mankind, that the only document, possession, justification of the Jewish people to have the national home in Eretz Israel is the Torah, Abraham. And he said even, this is undoubtedly, he said to Lord Peel, that we are the descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Undoubtedly. I have now the opportunity, the chance of my life to ask him, Mr. Ben-Gurion, is this story true? Maybe a legend? And I asked him on 72 something which happened, if it happened, on 37, 35 years ago. Crossing World War II and all the wars in Israel. He smiled that I know the story. And he said to me in Hebrew 2 words, Emet ve'yatziv. It's true, and how true. In print there is my book of memories now, a special chapter, a special volume dedicated to 1937. All the speech I gave in the Peel Committee is there, and this jest with the Bible is also included in my book. When it come out, I send it to you a copy. He didn't send because he passed away that year. I asked him, Mr. Ben-Gurion, may I also ask you a personal question? He said, why not? If someone has a document, all his hopes, all his dreams, all his expectations dependent in the authentic of this document, what will he do with this document? He will keep it in a safe. He will frame it in glass. He will watch it day and night. He will not leave it, neglect it even one moment. All his lives, his dreams, dependent on this document. If you say, and I'm very happy to hear it from you, you are the authority. You say, the leader of the Jewish state, the builder of the Jewish state, that all our expectations dependent on the Bible. How can we expect our neighbors, our enemies, like Yasser Arafat, I've mentioned the name, he was alive at the time, that Yasser Arafat and Omar Gaddafi and Hafez al-Assad, they will respect it? Maybe we can ask it only if we ourselves respect it first. It demands no selectivity in this document. We cannot take one line of the document and another line to throw away. In the same document, which speaks about our right for Eretz Israel, the Shabbat is also included in the same document. Kabed et avicha ve'et imecha is in this document. It's accepted by everyone. Kibudav. But talit and tefillin in the synagogue and Kriyat Shema is also in the same document. So if we want that the world, whole mankind, will accept this document and respect our rights to Eretz Israel based on this document, we have to show a personal example, no selective, to take it as it is, 613 commandments. One of them is Eretz Israel. Some of them are a result of this belonging, the holiness of Eretz Israel. Mr. Ben-Gurion, you know what he answered? He was very smart, very clever, very sharp. That's why he didn't answer the question. Speaking about history, Let's assume, to show you one sentence from the Torah about the belonging, the linkage of the land of Israel to the people of Israel, showing one thing. Can you use your imagination that you are not here in the Jewish center of Amsterdam now, but you are now in New York City, East River of Manhattan, sitting in the building of the United Nations, in the General Assembly, and I come to represent the Jewish state. And I want to convince you that Eretz Israel belongs to the Jewish people. Use your imagination. You are now representatives of 180 members of the UN Assembly. All kinds, all the continents, all the religions, all the races. And I do represent the Jewish state or the Jewish people. And I will tell you a very short thing, not quoting sentences from the Bible, not from the sages, from the Talmud, nothing of this kind. Just facts that nobody can deny them. Because the only thing you cannot change is the past. You can change the present. You may, sometimes you have to change the future, but past, it happened already. You can change it. I show you something from the past, and you must agree with me. What do I mean? Since we came with Joshua ben Nun 3,300 years ago, crossing the Jordan of the 10th of Nisan, entering to the land of Canaan, 7 years independence war against 31 kings of Canaan, and later on 7 years to share the land of Israel to the tribes, to the families. After us, there were many other rulers who ruled over Eretz Israel, what they call Palestine. Many. I don't speak about the old period, Shumer, Akkad, Ugarit. I speak since Exodus, since we came with Yoshua ben Nun to Eretz Israel. After us, and besides, there were Ammon, Moab, Tzor, Sidon, Aram, Edom, Amalek, Plishtim. An empire by the name Ashur, who expelled the 10 tribes from Shomron, from Samaria. Shalmaneser, king of Ashur. Sancherib came to Jerusalem. And then Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, whom I have mentioned before. They ruled over this land. Persia, of Koresh, Dariavesh, Xerxes. Koresh enabled us to come on a second time to Eretz Israel, to return from the exile in Babel. And then came the Greece, Talmai, Seleucus, kings like Antiochus, and all his generals, Lysias, Bakchides, Nicanor, they ruled over Palestine. Mokdon came to visit Israel. And then came the Roman. Pompeius was the first. And they have destroyed the Second Temple. And they took us to Europe. First diaspora in Europe started then, 70 past era. And then came a ruler, an emperor of Rome by the name Adrianus, who wanted us to forget and wanted the word and the history to deny the very contact between the Jewish people and its homeland. So he said, Yerushalayim, don't mention such a name. It doesn't exist anymore. There is no Yerushalayim. It's dead. He called Yerushalayim Ilia Capitolina. History. Eretz Israel, no Israel. Palestina. He was the first to give the name Palestina. Adrianus, Emperor of Rome. Rome was divided on 476 past area between east and west, Octavianus in the west and Antoninus in east. They ruled in the name of Byzance, Byzantion. Together with Rome, they ruled over Palestine 600 years. And no enemies, no battlefields, 600 years. And an empire like Rome? I will explain exactly why I mention it. After 600 years of Rome, the crusade, Richard Lionheart, his followers, 200 years, Salvanim. Mamlukim, 200 years, ruled over Palestine. Arabs, Harun al-Rashid, Salah ad-Din, 460 years. Turkish, Ottomani, 400 years. And then came the British, 30 years. General Allenby entered 1917. 1947, the UN had that is a decision of establishing the Jewish state. May 48, 60 years ago, the flag of Great Britain was changed into the Israeli flag. 30 years. What do I want with this list of names of empires and years? What's this? I want to ask you, you sit now in the assembly of the UN. Some of you ambassadors, historians, leaders of your nations, leaders. Can you give me a name of one book which was established, composed in those 460 years when the Arabs ruled over Palestine? One book that the Turkish Empire, 400 years, no enemies, a lot of money. 600 years the Roman. One discovery, tell me. One leader, tell me. One university, tell me. One factory, tell me. One achievement, one accomplishment. One thing which is worthy to remember. One contribution to mankind, which was established or founded those 600 years, 460 and 400 years. Give me one name. Nothing. The answer is zero. And look, these Jews. I speak to the UN now. Look to my people, my nation. The Bible, all the prophets. Where was it achieved? In Eretz Israel. The whole Bible. Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim. King David with the Psalms. King Solomon with Mishlei and Kohelet and Shir HaShirim. The Mishnah, Shas Sidrei Mishnah, Eretz Israel, in poverty, in the time of the destruction of the Second Temple, was achieved there. The Talmud Yerushalmi, so many Kohanim and judges and kings and leaders, Matityahu, Judah the Maccabee. $5,000 books a year are being printed in Israel a year, 5,000 books. Some of them I would give up. But you can deny the fact it's a land of creating things. And take only the last 60 years. Here I come to my point. What happened in those 60 years while Eretz Israel came back to our arms after those hundreds of years of emptiness, of deserts. Even Judah, Samaria, deserts, hills, rocks. Look at the last 60 years. Yerushalayim, can you compare Yerushalayim of today with Yerushalayim in 1948? King George, Yafo, Ben Yehuda, that's all. But today, Be'er Sheva, there was no one Jew in Be'er Sheva in 1948. Akko was not one Jew in 48. Ra'anana is exactly like it was 60 years ago. Bnei Brak is the same. Givat Shmuel, there was no Givat Shmuel. Carmiel, it didn't exist. Ariel didn't exist. Efrat, Male Edomim, Kdumim, Elkanah, they didn't exist yet. From 600,000 people to over 6 million. Most of them came with nothing, like myself. Children of youth aliyah, orphanages. 60 years only. In the history of the Jewish people, it's a small, small milestone. And all these achievements. Yeshivat Hesder from Kiryat Shmona and Yeshivat Hesder in Eilat. There's no one city in Israel with no Torah center. And the universities, Ben Gurion in Beersheba, Technion, Weizmann Institute, Yerushalayim, Tel Aviv, Bar Ilan, medical centers, professors, Nobel Prizes, in all fields. In 60 years, in spite of the wars and the bloodshed. I want to tell you, there is no one day our neighbors left us quiet. 60 years. No one day. 45 rockets a day on Sderot last week. 50 rockets a day last week. A volunteer from Ecuador came to one of the kibbutzim. A volunteer was killed in a knife on his back last week. We didn't have one day of rest, one day of peace. And 60% of the cake of the budget has to go, first of all, to defense needs. All what we have, schools, hospitals, yeshivot, universities, roads, rail spans, shikunim, housing and building for the new olim, for the newcomers, everything is of the 40% of the budget. Because 60% has to go for IDF, for weapon. No choice. We want to live. We don't want to commit suicide. So look at those non-achievements of hundreds of years by our enemies, and look at the last 60 years. Please, members of the UN, be objective. Put your hands on your hearts and tell me, am I wrong? Did I say something which is not true? Tell me the truth. Do you want to correct me? Please, try. Try. What I say, the Torah said 3,000 years ago in the book of Leviticus, chapter 26, Parashat Bechukoisai. ושוממו עליה אויביכם היושבים בה ואתם בארץ אויביכם. Nachmanidas emphasized this sentence. The Almighty told us then in Mount Sinai. This chapter, Leviticus 26, was told by Moshe Rabbeinu at the Mount of Sinai, just 7 weeks after Exodus. He said us, when a day will come and you will be in exile in the lands of your enemies, and your enemies will take the place here in your land, it will be a desert. Shmama, emptiness. they will not make fruit in your home, because this home belongs to you. Every agriculture knows tomorrow is Tu B'Shvat. Every agriculture, a student of agriculture knows that not every land fits every fruit. Here is good for flour and wheat. There is good for grapes, and there is good for figs, and there is good for olives. Everyone understands it. The same thing with humanity. A mensch, a nation, a group of Menschen, like the trees. Not in every land is his home. He cannot grow up. He cannot flourish. They cannot multiply unless in their home. Like the flowers, like the fruit, like the vegetable, like wheat, like everything. It has his place. Our place is Eretz Israel. Any other who try, and they have tried hundreds of years, to replace us in Eretz Israel, it's a failure. They didn't succeed. They tried hard. None of them succeeded. None of them was successful in that land. The only one in all fields, literature, Torah, agriculture, medicine, high-tech, and the army, this feast of power, Tzahal. With that I want to conclude. In the Six-Day War, 40 years ago, was a cartoon in the newspaper Ma'ariv, a daily newspaper in Israel. The one who made this cartoon, Kriel Gardosh, passed away already. I will just develop the idea of this cartoon. 6 days war. Srulik, the Israeli citizen, is in uniform. He was enforced to a war from 3 sides. Nasser in Egypt in the south, King Hussein in the east, and Abdel Jadid from Syria in the north. All 3 surrounded us. Only the sea, the Mediterranean Sea, which was also occupied by submarines of Egypt. We had no place where to escape. 19 years old, the whole country, the whole state is only 19 years old. And a miracle happened. The cartoon is about Srulik in the uniform with the shoes, tall shoes of a paratrooper, skipping on milestones. And each milestone has a name. One leg on that milestone and the other leg on the edge of the milestones. Jaljulia, Kalkilia, Shechem, Jenin, Tulkarem, Albire, Ramallah, העיר העתיקה ירושלים, גוש עציון, חברון, רפיח, עזה, ח'אן יונס, בית שאן, קנטרה, איסמעיליה, סואץ, ביר גפגפה, טסה, פורט תאופיק, תל פחר, דרדרה, דרבשיה, קונטרה. One leg is here and one leg is there. An angel, which on it is written the word, the minister of history, the angel of history, with a feather, running after Srulik the soldier, and he cries out, Srulik, please not so fast. I have no time to write the names. It's too fast for me. The history couldn't follow the achievements of this Srulik in 6 days. if you make a comparison with empires who fight now or last century in Iraq, in Vietnam, in Korea, in Laos, in Cambodia, in Chechnya, in the Falkland Islands, in Algeria, last century, empires, United States of America, Soviet Union, Great Britain, France. Who won the battle in 6 days? Who won the Yom Kippur battle in 2 fronts in 18 days? From October the 6th to October 24, we were enforced to undersign a ceasefire. 101 kilometers from Cairo on the ground of Egypt and 34 kilometers from Damascus in Syria. In 18 days, Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, you know the names. Menachem Begin said once, I must quote it in Hebrew, the whole story of the Peel Committee and Ben Gurion with the Bible, Begin said it in one sentence. It's very appropriate to Begin. It fits him. אנחנו לא יושבים כאן בזכות הכוח. We do not sit here, we don't settle here because of the power, because we are stronger. Not בזכות הכוח, but בכוח הזכות. In power of the privilege. Which privilege? What the Almighty have promised to our ancient father, Avraham Avinu. In this zchut of the promise of the Almighty, we sit here and we will stay here forever. You're a man of the cloth.